Chami samchur nimba shiwada, chodan tumbe dodem malupa, beme lunge drubraj. Dorna tingne tsirava tamche dan, techi pardo ne gav tamche tu. Rese kyamne lama ketleme, tukche chenge dala sikso so. Gongyab drewe nyamda dachala, chetsun lame tuche rab gongne. Kodan sunge nawa drame tu, nyamsu nyungwe kesan toprasho. Kewa kunto yanda lama dan, drame cheki pela longche Sadan lamgi yente rabzone, dorje change kopa nyurutobe sho. Pakyuke kodan dagi alu, pakyuke sundan dagi anga, pakyuke tudan dagi tenyerme chiktum. Jingelo ma kyuke kudan dagelo ma kyuke sundan dagenga ma kyuke tudan dageye tenyerme chiktu jingelo. Om Muni Muni Maha Muni Shakya Muni Swaha Om Mahamuni Shakyamuni Swaha Om Muni Muni Mahamuni Shakyamuni Swaha. Sashipeki Choshiameto Tramare Rabalingashi Nide Gyampadi Sange Shintu Mikte Ulawarki Drokunanam Dashingla Chapara Shoyedam Guru Ratna Mandrala Kam Niryatayami. Sangye Chedan Soge Chonam La Chancho Pardo Dani Kyapsu Chi Dagi Chushe Gibe Sonam Ki Drola Pinchre Sangye Druparesho Sangye Chedan Soge Chonam La Chancho Pardo Dani Kyapsu Chi Dagi Chushe Gibe Sonam Ki Drola Pinchra Sangye Druparesho Sangye Chedan Tsoge Chonam La Chancho pardo dani kyapsu chin dagi chushe gibe sonam ki drola pinchira sange druparashon. In the Buddha, Dharma and Sangha, I take refuge until enlightenment. Through the practice of generosity and the other perfections, may I attain Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings. Nel Buddha, nel Dharma e nel Sangha prendo rifugio fino all'illuminazione. Con la pratica della generosità e delle altre perfezioni, possa io ottenere lo stato di Buddha per il beneficio di tutti gli esseri senzienti. Haye ke dan ludan chin ke drubon dan da mi ke nam dam drowa kun ge danam che sampa tham che ke to da ge che ten to. Good morning, buongiorno. Una volta, one time, when receiving teachings on the gradual path to enlightenment, it was precisely the commentary of the Guru Puja when it comes to the last part of the text, which is verse 84, the gradual path to enlightenment. Geshe Chekawa Rinpoche, he told me this simple simple thing that remained in my mind, and I tried to apply it in many different circumstances, in which he said the first thing that we need to do in order to realize anything is to wish for it, is to desire it. The first step is that when we direct our mind towards something, that's when the journey to get there begins. That's when the path begins. When we develop the wish, the desire, and the stronger is our desire, the stronger is our wish, our passion, the more stable becomes the path. So the first thing is to desire. And yesterday we were talking about the preliminaries. And as we saw, we conclude the preliminaries when we developed the wish, the desire, the passion to get out of samsara, to reach so-called nirvana. It's an inner state, which normally, instead of the word desire, I used another term, which is aspiration. Very often in some texts, the word desire is used in a more negative aspect, like a defilement, and when it's in a virtuous way, is used the word aspiration. But in a simple way, it's always a desire. It's always, what do I want? So, it's very, very important for us to understand that what we want makes a big, big difference in our lives. And it's one of the first things that we need to make clear to ourselves. What are my priorities? What do I actually want most of all? And it's not so simple because our desires are not defined by our understanding, but our desires are built up during our life from our whole paradigm. There are many, many aspects which influence very much where do we project our happiness and our suffering. There are many, many aspects that build up together. So, to make clear what do we want, there are different parts that we need to build up before in order to be able to may have this clear aspiration. That's what we went through these previous days. First, relying correctly upon a spiritual guide. Then we have recognizing the preciousness of this life, the certainty of death, the uncertainty of the moment of death. Then we see the law of karma. Then we see what it means by the 3 types of suffering, until we get to the conclusion where we see samsara clearly. And then by that we develop this urge to get out of samsara, to reach a state of peace, and that's when we take refuge, when we truly want to get out of samsara. Okay? So it's something that we need to repeat. We need to go through it again and again, so that it becomes something that it's not superficial, but it's deep inside us. It is said that when we start our path, the first time we developed this urge to get out of samsara, this aspiration, this desire, in Tibetan is called Ngechung Pusuk. I don't know precisely how to translate Pusuk, but I would need to take a dictionary to look the precise meaning of the word Pusuk. But my understanding of the word Pusuk, or the meaning of Ngechung Pusuk, is the definitive emergence, the wish to get out of samsara, to reach the state of peace, of nirvana, which is just momentary. It is like something very strong. The Ngechung Pusuk, it's very strong, but it doesn't last very long. It's like, oh, I must get out of samsara, there's no other way, I must do it. Then there we are, 1-2 days maybe, then suddenly something happens and we forgot about samsara, This is called Ngechung Pusuk. This is this momentary, In Brazil we have a saying which we say is like the fire of dry grass. That when it burns, it's very strong, but then it ends very quick. So similar to that, it's normal that when we start learning and entering and deepening our understanding about samsara and so on, it is normal that in the beginning we have these strong desires, that some moment we are able to connect and we feel some particular emotion, and we may feel like, oh, I must get out of samsara, then we get out of the gompa and we forget it. Okay, this can happen. It's quite normal. That's why we need to repeat it again and again and again and again and again and again, and I can stay here the whole day until next year saying again and again. Okay? And I mean 2023. Okay, we could say saying again and again for a long time. Which means that we need to familiarize our mind. That's why it's called a training. And a training happens through repetition. But what we need to train in here are not concepts. The concepts we learn, and they are easy to understand, are states of mind, states of consciousness. So we need to familiarize ourselves, we need to train ourselves into the preciousness of this life, not taking for granted the opportunity we have, into the awareness of the certainty of our own mortality, the certainty of death, the law of karma, so the power of every action, the 4 aspects of karma that we went through, until we see samsara clearly and we have this strong urge to get out of samsara. So all of these are states of consciousness, and we need to develop them So we induce ourselves by reflecting to that state of consciousness, and then we train ourselves into that state. How we train ourselves on a certain state of consciousness? By generating it and familiarizing ourselves with it again and again, again and again. Okay? So, if we feel this strong urge, I must get out of samsara, and we have this strong moment, okay, nice, but don't get too excited. What we need is a stable state of this desire, more than a momentary strong wish. No? It's like when I see people that are very new to Dharma, and then they come to Buddhism in the very beginning, and it happens sometimes that there is this sort of falling in love with Dharma. And sometimes I saw people coming and say, oh, Lama, I want to give everything away of my normal life. I must dedicate only to the Dharma. There is nothing more in my life than Dharma, and put everything like with such a big enthusiasm. No? And normally I say, very good, wait a little bit. Because we need stability. No? Otherwise there is the danger, like it happened one time, many years ago. I don't remember the names, but there's a story that I was taught. One Western lady from England, she was a doctor with a very good career, nice life in England, everything. Then she met her master. I don't remember who it was actually. This we are talking about in the 70s, 80s, maybe somewhere around there. The beginning of Buddhism in the West. So she left her job, left her family, everything, went to live in India, became a nun, entered, followed everything with her full energy, very nice, and so on. Went to do 3 years retreat, entered into retreat, was like fully committed. And then after a few years she was there, she started seeing that actually she didn't reach enlightenment yet. And she started seeing that actually, her own defilements were deeper than she thought. And she started seeing that samsara was also in the monastery. And there were conflicts, and everything was not everything nice and beautiful. There were many different difficulties and so on. And then one moment she said, okay, I want to go back to my previous life. So she leaves the monastery in India. She went back, but then she had no more job, no more house. And then she was very upset with Dharma at one point, saying, I gave up everything, then things are not as I expected, things here are not really that good, look, so many problems also here, this and that, So finally, that's what I was told, she was in a moment in which she didn't have one or the other. That's why I don't know what was the next chapter of the story. I hope she found peace in her life and a way how to integrate the Dharma into her own life, and I really wish the best. But the point is that we need to do things in a stable way. And there may be the moment in which there is this strong enthusiasm, and we must use this enthusiasm, we must take that energy and use it. But we need to make stable steps. Okay? And into this path, to develop this urge to get out of samsara, it's very, very important. And as Lama Tsongkhapa said in the 3 main aspects of this path, Tetara kompe korwe punsola yimun kechi tsamya mike shing ninsen kuntu tarpa tönirlo chungna tetsenge chung kebalas. So when do we complete the preliminaries? As Lama Tsongkhapa said, Tetar kompe korwe punsola yimun kechi tsamya mike shing. By familiarizing yourself in such way, by meditating in such way, which means by familiarizing ourselves with the preciousness of this life, with the impermanence, the certainty of death, our own mortality, with the law of karma, with the general and specific sufferings of samsara, understanding what is samsara, by familiarizing ourselves with the all-pervasive suffering as suffering, and so on. all what we have been talking these previous days, by familiarizing oneself with all of this, when we do not develop, yimempa means aspiration for the pleasures of samsara, for not even one instant. For not even one instance, we are driven by the attachment. We don't stop taking refuge into mundane things. We don't find true satisfaction into the excellences of cyclic existence, which basically means the pleasures, which basically means the, recognition, power, money, and so on. When we do not find true satisfaction in any of that, not even for one instant, and when, by day and night, at every moment, we have the wish, the aspiration, the desire, we have the mind that wishes for liberation, at that moment, the true renunciation or the definitive emergence have been generated. Okay, first time I read this verse, I got a bit depressed. I said, come on, if the first step is so difficult, what's the point to do all the rest, Because when I read it, I said, today, day and night, wish for liberation from samsara, and not to project one's own happiness, not even for one instant into any mundane thing. Come on. Maybe someone in the past did it, but I don't see anyone around me. But I reflected a lot upon it. And my conclusion is that when we have a very strong desire, when we have passion for something, that thought is constant. It's like we can have pleasures, but we know that these pleasures will not sustain our way of happiness. There are nice things in life and we should enjoy them. At no point is saying we should not enjoy our own life. Rinpoche put a lot of clarity in that in Self-Healing number 3 and other teachings also from other many great masters saying we must be able to enjoy without attachment. Which means we have a physical body. No? And even in one text of Lama Tsongkhapa called the Rimna Saldren, the clarification of the 5 stages, which is a commentary on Guya Samaja, completion stage. Anyhow, there is one point in the text in which Lama Tsongkhapa says we need to cultivate and develop bliss. And we need to be able to use the inner experience of bliss and pleasure. And then he puts an hypothetical question, which is, but you say that the basic condition to use bliss in one's path is to have no attachment for bliss. So how can I generate bliss if I have no attachment for it? No? And he gives the answer saying, it's similar to the fact that someone that has no attachment for food will still eat when hungry. We may have no attachment for the food, but when we are in front of food, we eat, and it's pleasurable, it's nice, it's not something harmful, but we are not projecting our happiness in the food. So in our lives, we should have pleasures, we should have bliss and joy and everything. There's no doubt of that. If I like drinking the water and I am drinking the water and I'm experiencing joy, wonderful. And there is a way of transforming it into the path, this joy, which we will talk later. It doesn't need to be a selfish, mundane experience. Any sort of bliss, of joy that we can experience, it can clearly become part of our path to enlightenment. So at no point here I'm saying pleasure, bliss, it's something negative. What we are saying is that just our normal, mundane pleasures, as we were talking yesterday, cannot sustain truly our happiness. And once we understand it, once we have this feeling within us clear, then we stop projecting our happiness into it. And this is the first part of what Lama Tsongkhapa was saying. When we do not project satisfaction, not even for a moment, into mundane pleasures. And at the same time, there is a constant wish behind every action we do to reach the state of liberation from suffering, to reach nirvana. Okay? Which is similar, for example, if we take a very simple, common experience, when someone falls in love. When someone has a very strong desire, attachment for something, like when we have a true, strong urge, no? What happens is that how often we think about the object of desire when we fall in love. No? One time I made a question, and there was one friend that was completely in love, and she answered, "One time that never ends." So another way of talking about so-called renunciation, the definitive emergence, is to fall in love with enlightenment, to fall in love with liberation from samsara. It's important for us to understand that definitive emergence is not aversion towards samsara, but it's mainly attraction towards nirvana. It's the mind that wishes for peace, that wishes for joy, that wishes for satisfaction, that wishes for a state of well-being that is beyond external conditions. And when we fall in love with it, when it's present at every moment of our life, that's when we have completed the preliminaries. Okay? So, this is the first step that we go through. And now we will start with the second. But I think when Geshe Chekawa here says, first train in the preliminaries, I think it's quite clear, right? Okay then. Now, let's go once again through the 7 points. Now we go to the second, but we will just go once again to the 7. Because this is a very complete training, and the training is made on 7 steps. Okay? So first, train in the preliminaries. Second, okay, is the train in the actual practice. Train oneself in the mind of bodhichitta, in the mind of awakening, which is relative bodhichitta and absolute bodhichitta. Train oneself in love and wisdom. Third, transform adverse circumstances into the path to enlightenment. Train on how to transform every circumstance of our life on our own spiritual path. Okay? Fourth, how to integrate the path into every aspect of our life. And in the fourth part, it includes also how to train for one's own death, which is very important. Fifth, how to know if our training is going correctly or not. So checking our training, looking if we're training correctly or not. Sixth, the commitments of mind training. Seventh, the precepts of mind training. Commitments and precepts are guidelines for our own path, for our training, to apply on our daily life. Okay? So now, we go to the second. As I explained in the first day, there have been many, many versions of the 7-point mind training text that developed in Tibet. It was originally written by Geshe Chekawa in the 13th century, between the end of the 12th century, I think, okay, yeah, around the 12th century, actually, mid-12th century. It's when it was written, the text of the 8 verses of mind training. And in the centuries that came after, Tibet didn't have like massive printing or things like that. It was mainly manuscripts. And different versions of the text came out. So they had some small differences between one version and another version. So in the 1900, when it was made a request to Papunka Rinpoche, which is the guru of Kyabche Trichan Dorje Chang, which is the guru of Lama Ganche Rinpoche. So it's like Papunka Rinpoche in the Gelupa tradition at his time was basically the guru of all the gurus. It was like almost every teaching and lineage passes through him. Not everything, but almost everything. So he was a really very important master. So at his time, his disciples came, someone, and made a request to him saying, "Oh, please, can you make a version of the 7 points mind training for us that we can follow, one version?" Because they have been different. So what he did is that he took the different versions existing in Tibet, he studied all of them, he went through the commentaries that were written of the 7-point mind training by Lama Tsongkhapa, by Yonzin Yeshe Gyaltsen, by Penchen Losan Chogi Gyaltsen, before that by Gyawa Gendun Drup, by many important masters. He took all the most important commentaries, and then he made a version that was consistent with everything. Okay? So that's the text that we have here. So in this text, as you can see, there is one part which is in bold, which are the titles that he added. Then there is the part which is in italic, which is basically the explanations that he added. Okay? And then there is the part of the text which is written in just normal font, which is the original text itself. Okay? So, I will just read as the text goes. Number 2, the actual practice. Training in the awakening mind. Niba, Mweshi Chanchu Gisem Jonwalas, Twendan Chanchu Gisem Jonsu Dan, Kunso Chanchu Gisem Jonsu Niles, Twendan Chanchu Gisem Jonsu, Yikning Palcher Mundu Sunkyans, Ranglo, Jamgon Sonkapa Chembe, Shefse Tar, Lojong Nime Weser, Losan Goenge, Dutsi Nimbo, Kelsan Tsatsik Sok, Mangbor Woktu Sumbe Shin, Goeba Keber Chengile Oktus, Kober Chawes. So the actual practice, training in the awakening mind. It's divided into 2. How to train in the ultimate awakening mind, how to train in the conventional awakening mind. Okay? How to train in the ultimate bodhichitta, ultimate awakening mind, absolute bodhichitta. It can be translated into different ways. It's basically how to train oneself in wisdom, in the correct view of reality. The second, how to train in conventional awakening mind or in conventional bodhicitta or in relative bodhicitta. It can be translated into different ways. It means how to train one's own mind in love and compassion. So basically, the main training is divided into 2. Training one's own mind in wisdom and training one's own mind in love and compassion, making it simple. Okay? Then Papunka Rinpoche adds, according to most of the older records, the training in ultimate awakening mind is dealt with first. However, according to our own tradition, following the gentle protector Tsongkhapa, as contained in such works as Mind Training Like the Rays of Sun, which was written by Horto Nankapel, direct disciple of Lama Tsongkhapa, The Ornament of Lobsang Tots by Penchen Losang Chogi Gyaltsen, The Essence Nectar by Yönzin Geshe Gyaltsen, the one that wrote the commentary of the Guru Puja also, and Kunsan's Roots Words, the order is reversed for special reasons. And then in Tibetan it's also say, and so for that reason I will explain it following this tradition. Which means the original order, how the text was originally written by Geshe Chekawa, Geshe Dorje. It was first how to train in wisdom, second how to train in love and compassion. Okay, this was the order of the training. But Lama Tsongkhapa explained it in the opposite way. Lama Tsongkhapa added first how to train in compassion and love, second how to train in wisdom. The reason for that is that we can find these explanations already in the texts of the commentaries of the Buddha Sutra of Perfection of Wisdom. There is two main commentaries on the Sutra of Perfection of Wisdom. If we would ask, according to our Buddhist tradition, what is the Bible of Buddhism, if we should ask, what is like the main text that we follow? If there is one main book, this is the Sutra of Perfection of Wisdom, written by Buddha Shakyamuni, taught by Buddha Shakyamuni, written 300 years later. But the Sutra of Perfection of Wisdom is the basis of everything that we practice. Okay? So the Sutra of Perfection of Wisdom comes in three main versions, which in Tibetan is called Yum Gyedring Dusum, and the Sutra of Perfection of Wisdom is given the name as the Mother. So it's referred as the Mother. So there is the short, the middle, and the long version of the Mother. The short version of the Sutra of Perfection of Wisdom, of the Mother, is in 8,000 verses. The middle version is in 20,000 verses, and the long version is in, I think, 100,000 verses, something like that. Okay? And the 8,000 verses is basically one volume of more or less 1,000 pages. Then there is the extremely condensed version of the Sutra of Perfection of Wisdom, which is the Heart Sutra. So, on the Sutra of Perfection of Wisdom, there were two main masters which explained it to us in two different approaches. One of these masters was called Nagarjuna, and the other master was called Asanga. Okay? And we can find their representation. If you look behind me, above, there is, let's call the blue window where there is Akshobhya and Mamaki. And above it, at the center, is Buddha Vajradhara, which is the form how Buddha Shakyamuni manifested at the tantric teachings. So it's representing the state of Buddhahood. Then on the two sides, on my right, there is Buddha Maitreya. On the left, there is Buddha Manjushri. Then together with Maitreya, on the right side, there is Asanga. Near to Manjushri, on the left side, there is Nagarjuna. Okay? This is representing the root of our own lineage. So, it is said that Buddha Shakyamuni, Manjushri and Maitreya were two direct disciples of Buddha Shakyamuni. Okay? So, Manjushri shared with Nagarjuna one teachings that made him to give the commentary on the Sutra of Perfection of Wisdom, while Maitreya shared it with the teachings with Asanga, through which Asanga made also a commentary on the Sutra of Perfection of Wisdom, which is a commentary which is called the commentary of the hidden meaning. Basically, we have the apparent meaning and the hidden meaning. Okay? So the apparent meaning, the direct meaning of the Sutra of Perfection of Wisdom is the explanation of the correct view of reality. Okay, development of wisdom. The hidden meaning inside the Sutra of Perfection of Wisdom, which was explained by Asanga through the teachings that he received from Maitreya in the text called The Ornament of Clear Realization, he explains the gradual path to enlightenment. Step by step, what are the steps that we need to follow to reach the state of Buddhahood? Okay. So we have, Nagarjuna wrote the one text called The Root of the Middle Way, Umatsawa Sherab, so which is the one main commentary on the Sutra of Perfection of Wisdom, which is bringing the path, or which is called also the Profound Path. And then there is a vast path, which was commented by Asanga. So we have these two teachings that in our lineage we follow both together. Okay? So this we can find, for example, when you have the representation of the field of merit. Okay, here we have it represented a little bit small, near to Prajna Paramita, the door there. There is a representation. And if you look well into that representation, which is like many, many people together, there's Lama Tsongkhapa in the center, okay? And then there is, okay, you see the door with the symbol of long life? On the left side, above, okay? I don't know if it's clear. Can you see? This is called the merit field of the Guru Puja, okay? Can someone just go there and point it, please? Yes, that one, okay? Okay, that painting there, if you look at it, and who is at home, you can just write in Google, Field of Merit, Guru Puja, it will come up as an image, okay? Merit Field, Guru Puja. So, if you look to that image, it has in the center Lama Tsongkhapa, then there is 5 straight lines of masters, of other images, and then there is 2 sorts of groups going from like one rainbow from the heart of Lama Tsongkhapa. From 2 rainbows, there is 2 groups, one on the right and one on the left. Can you see that? So the 2 groups on the sides are actually all the lineage masters from the profound lineage and from the vast lineage. So in one of these groups, at the center is Buddha Manjushri, on the other group, and the center is Buddha Maitreya. And then starting from Asanga with Maitreya and Nagarjuna with Manjushri, there is the whole line of transmission of these 2 lineages, which come to Lama Tsongkhapa. Okay? Then in the center, these straight lines are the other lineages, like the lineage of Lamring, the lineage of direct experience, the lineage of Yamantaka, the lineage of Guhyasamaja. There are different lineages of transmission, that all these lineages come to Lama Tsongkhapa. This is what is being represented there, okay? So there is basically 2 main approaches on the path. One approach which gives emphasis to wisdom, another approach which gives emphasis to compassion, okay? For some time, these 2 approaches were taught separately. In the approach of compassion, there is also wisdom. In the approach of wisdom, there is also compassion. But a different emphasis was given to each one of them. Okay? So in our lineage, originally there were these 2 main approaches, that they came to us through Asanga and Nagarjuna. Then, when these teachings came later, like to Atisha, and gradually arriving to Lama Tsongkhapa and so on, the lineage, these 2 lineages, they combined and they became one. Okay, so these 2 approaches, they came together. So nowadays we have the fortune to have access to both explanations of the profound view and the extensive view, which Lama Tsongkhapa put all of this into his teachings. Now, in the text written by Asanga, which is called The Ornament of Clear Realization, Ngompar Tokpe Gyen in Tibetan. I just say these names because we are always talking about an uninterrupted lineage. And now we have little time to explain things. It's nice to see what is the line of transmission, especially also of knowledge and commentaries. So Buddha taught the Sutra of Perfection of Wisdom. Then Asanga wrote the commentary on the Sutra of Perfection of Wisdom, explaining to us the Sutra of Perfection of Wisdom. When we go through this text, there is the reference of the different passages of the Sutra and explaining the meaning of it, showing the whole complete path to enlightenment. What happened is that Asanga text, I memorized it in the past. I studied it. It takes around 7 years to study this text. But just by the original text, I don't know if there is anyone that right away can understand it. So what happened is that, for example, to study the text of Asanga, the line of commentaries are Sutra of Perfection of Wisdom. Then we have the Ornament of Clear Realization. Then we have one commentary on the Ornament of Clear Realization. Then that commentary is quite difficult to understand. I wanted one time to memorize it. And then I went to my teacher saying, oh, again, I like to memorize this text. And he said, your teeth are not strong enough to bite it. Better you memorize the other commentary. And he was right. It's called the Dreba Tönsel, this text. Then on this commentary, there is one commentary written by Lama Tsongkhapa. And then there is also another commentary which is written by Gyatso Rinpoche, which is the direct disciple of Lama Tsongkhapa, which was written later in the life of Lama Tsongkhapa. And that commentary is actually seen as the main reference that we have nowadays. But still, then there is many, many commentaries on the commentary of Gyatso Rinpoche. So if we look of the line, we have the Sutra of Perfection of Wisdom, which is commented, first commentary, Dreba Tönsel. Then we have another commentary written by Lama Tsongkhapa's disciple, Gyatso Rinpoche. That's the main line. And then he made some references to Lama Tsongkhapa commentary also, but mainly is a direct commentary on the first commentary. And then there are many, many masters in Tibet from different monasteries. Each one make their own commentary on the commentary of Gyatso Rinpoche. Okay? Maybe there are 5 main lines of interpretation. And actually it's very interesting because in Tibet, there was this tradition of writing commentaries and explaining different points of view. And in one moment, one master called Jetsumpa, he had one disciple, how can I forget the name? Not possible. Kedru Tempa Dharke. So he told to his disciple Kedru Tempa Dharke, oh, you should write a complete commentary on the whole Buddhist philosophy. And then he wrote the commentary on his own view. And then his guru looked at the commentary and he said, not good enough. It's too similar to my own commentaries. You need to bring different views. We need opposite views. We need different views to make debate. Because by creating debates, that's how we can make sure that the knowledge remains. So it was typical in Tibet that every great monastery had their own commentary with slight different points of view, which will open debate between them. Okay? So then there is the Lamrim, which is a commentary based on direct practice on the Ornament of Clear Realization, which is the commentary of the Sutra of Perfection of Wisdom on the hidden meaning of the vast path, not the profound, the vast path, which is the detailed explanation step by step on the path to enlightenment. Okay, this is just to give one perspective. Then on the other side, there is always, starting from the Sutra of Perfection of Wisdom, Nagarjuna gave one commentary which is called The Root of the Wisdom of the Middle Way, Umatsawa Sherab. On the commentary of Nagarjuna, there was one first commentary which was written by one master called Buddhapalita. But his teachings were not given much importance. Actually, at his time, his teachings were completely ignored. Okay, because he was from a lower caste, and his way of writing didn't have very high poetic capacities, and it was not written in a very, elevated way of writing. It was simple writing. And at his time in the monastery of Nalanda, whenever one commentary was written, a book on Buddhism was written at their time, it needed to go through a committee with all the main knowledgeable masters at the time, and they would go and they would analyze the text from different points of view. If the meaning was correct, the way how the language that was used, and so on. And when the text passed through their examination, then it was printed and it was made available to everyone. If the text didn't pass on their examination, they would do something that was not nice actually, but they would take the manuscript, tie on a dog, and let the dog run through the city. You know? It's like saying this has no value. This was done in a way in order to make sure that the knowledge was kept correct. Because if we start making many versions and not controlling if there is coherence or not in the text and so on, after some time we can dilute the teachings, we can lose the meaning. But Buddhapalita, those that were making this consideration, they were not perfect wisdom beings. So Buddhapalita's commentary was not accepted at the time. Later, Buddhapalita was reborn as Chandrakirti. Chandrakirti was a master that he was born at a noble class. He was not from a lower caste. He was very much learned into writing and poetry and all of that. And he wrote the same meaning of Buddhapalita with a different language. And this became one of the most important commentaries. But Lama Tsongkhapa, he realized the true nature of reality by reflecting upon the book of Buddhapalita. Anyhow, the line that we know is Nagarjuna, the root of the middle way, of the wisdom of the middle way, which is commented by Chandrakirti, okay, in which there is a text which is called Entering the Middle Way, Umajukpa, which is the most well-known text memorized in every monastery, of Gelupa tradition at least. Not every monastery. The monasteries where Buddhist philosophy is studied deeply, which is the main big monasteries. I never had the opportunity to memorize this text. I read it, but I never had the opportunity to memorize it. Then on this text, there is a commentary by Lama Tsongkhapa called Umagompa Rapsel, which is the clear explanation, bringing clarity to the middle way, in which Lama Tsongkhapa explains verse by verse, word by word of the commentary of Nagarjuna, which I had the great opportunity to receive this full commentary. Then on that commentary of Lama Tsongkhapa, each great monastery have their own commentaries. Okay? So this is the line, little bit to understand of knowledge, how knowledge has been transmitted one generation after the other until coming to us. And we have mainly two different texts, two different ways of teaching that were written, and two different approaches in our tradition. One approach is the philosophical approach. The philosophical approach is based on learning the root text. Then it has one part which is explaining the general meaning. So in explaining the general meaning, for example, we go about bodhichitta. We will first learn the roots of it, which is okay. We make reference to the line of the ornament of clear realization of a sangha, which is semkepa nishendo chirianda zope janchudo tedan tenye doshinto dudan gebe gonejo. The 4 lines referring to bodhicitta. Then after there are more lines referring to the 22 types of bodhicitta. Anyhow, We go to the root text, then we learn what are the texts, the reference of Buddha's Sutra, which talked about in the Perfection of Wisdom Sutra, where is referring to bodhicitta. Then we enter into explanation of the general meaning, in which we study the definition of bodhicitta, the classification of bodhicitta, how many types of bodhicitta are there, what is the definition of each type of bodhicitta, examples of bodhicitta. We go through all that study. Then we enter into the next step, which is generating hypothetical doubts. So comes a moment in which we say, okay, first after studying the whole general meaning, definition, classification, examples, and so on, then there are texts which are specifically bringing doubts. So there are hypothetical questions. If bodhicitta is like this, how come that is like that? Is that bodhicitta, but because it doesn't fit here, it starts bringing many doubts. And then there is the last part, which is telatsopapoa, which is entering a debate. So the doubts are placed, and in the doubts there are two types of doubts, actual doubts and hypothetical doubts. Actual doubts were different traditions of study, different masters that had different views. So we say, some people say this. Normally when we say some people, we don't know precisely who it is. Then those that go into very detailed studies, they will go to study, okay, that different view, it's from whom? In Tibetan, we just say kachi. Kachi means someone. Someone have this point of view. Okay, and then there are other hypothetical questions which someone may ask this. And then comes the part of debating. Oh, how come this is like this, if that is like that? And then there is the whole part of logical explanation, to have a logical understanding about the meaning. Okay, this is the way how to study Buddhist philosophy. Okay, it takes ages. Okay, without entering into the part of Tantra, just the part of Sutra, which is basically to study the Ornament of Clear Realization, the Perfection of Wisdom Sutra, the commentary of Nagarjuna and Chandrakirti, to study the part which refers to logic and the part which refers to the functioning of the mind. Then there is the part which is basically the classification of phenomena. Then we study the whole part of logic, which I said before. Then there is the study of cosmology, and which is called Abhidharma, which has also a part of the mind. Then there is a part of monastic rules called Vinaya. This is the complete study, normally. That's how studying Buddhist philosophy. So there is a whole part of it. And if you study it full-time, in a modern way, it takes around 7 years. There is one university in Varanasi called the University of Higher Buddhist Studies of Varanasi, where they do this whole complete course in 7 years. But the original way to study it, when you give space to debating and to analysis and so on, the whole study takes around from 18 to 25 years, which is dedicating 11 months a year, 6 days a week, 12 hours a day. Okay? So this is the process normally. Then there is another type of teaching, and this teaching in the Western world is a bit difficult. This requires one person to dedicate full life only for that. And you start to meditate when you finish the study, more or less. Okay? So, I had the opportunity to study also in this way. It takes a long time, it's beautiful, but it requires a particular context also. Then there is the other way of the teachings, which is the same content, but is being taught specifically to the practice. So it doesn't make all the references to the original root texts. It doesn't give the classification and the definition and the examples. It doesn't bring the hypothetical questions and the doubts and the debate. But it brings the actual meaning and how to put it into practice. This is called Lamrim. Okay? Lamrim, Lojong, they go into the same category, which are texts which are specifically guided for practice. Behind Lamrim and Lojong, there is the whole philosophy which is keeping it somehow. Okay? This is why I often like to remember that inside Buddhist teachings, actually, there are no dogmas. There is nothing that we cannot ask why and how. Okay? There is even a very long and complex part when we study logic of how to explain the logic of reincarnation. How to prove logically the existence of reincarnation. But we don't need to go into that right now. Okay? Just to say there is a very long way of studies. It's very beautiful also. Anyhow. So Lamrim and Lojong has behind the whole philosophy, which any point we can go deeper into questioning and understanding, but it has an approach which is focused on direct practice. Okay? This I just wanted to give this feedback to you of understanding a little bit what is behind. And this is our tradition, have these two parts. Have the part of understanding through the whole philosophy, of studying or going deep into it. And then there is also the part of direct practice. Okay? Then there is a third type of text on Buddhist literature, which is not taking into consideration the whole sadhanas and so on, but on the sutra part, there is another part of texts, which is texts like the Bodhisattva Charyavatara, the guide to the Bodhisattva's way of life, which is a text which is not explaining anything. It's just a way to familiarize oneself with what we already know. Okay? It's a way to remind ourselves with the path. Okay? So, here we enter into the teachings of Lojong, which the focus is how to train the mind. The focus is not understanding the philosophy and learning the classification and going through the references of the original texts and so on. We are going to explain, basically, how to train one's own mind, how to realize. Okay? Now, when we enter into the level of practice, there are two main approaches, which were clearly explained in the Ornament of Clear Realization. And when we study in the more philosophical way, this is one of the first subjects that we go through. And here it is said that there were two kinds of disciples from the time of Buddha, which is the disciples with a higher intellectual capacity, Wangpo Nömpa, and disciples with a lower intellectual capacity, Wangpo Tulpo. Okay? What's the main difference? For those with a higher intellectual capacity, these are people that first they need to understand, then they believe. So they will not follow anything unless they clearly understand it. So they will not take refuge in Buddha unless they really understand what is a Buddha. They will not wish to get out of samsara until they don't have a very clear understanding what is samsara and what is nirvana, why it's possible to get out of samsara, and all of this. So until everything is not clear in their own understanding, they will not follow. This is the higher intellect capacity. Then there is the medium and the lower intellect capacity, which will start following out of belief. So developing trust in someone that guides, in one's own master, and we say, okay, I don't have a clear understanding yet what is samsara. I have some sort of understanding, but it makes some sense. I trust it. I follow. I don't know truly what is a Buddha. I have some sort of idea, but it doesn't make full sense. I cannot truly understand deeply, but yet I trust. This is the lower intellectual capacity. Okay? what I see in our modern days, we are, sorry to put it this way, but we are the lower intellectual capacity that thinks that has the higher intellectual capacity. Okay? This is more or less how it appears. So, for those that have a higher intellectual capacity, first they need to train on wisdom. Because the only way to truly understand what is a Buddha, the only way to truly understand even one's own potential of getting out of samsara, the only way of truly understanding even what is nirvana, is by understanding the correct view of reality. Emptiness. We will explain this later, okay? But following a correct, logical process, the only way to have what is called an valid inferential cognition of a Buddha, which means having a logical understanding of what is a Buddha, having a logical understanding, correct logical understanding of enlightenment, of nirvana. It's by first understanding, not realizing, but intellectually understanding the correct view of reality. So that's why one of the approaches is first explain wisdom, first the correct view of reality. Then you start with bodhicitta, because the bodhicitta, relative bodhicitta, is not only love and compassion, but it requires the trust that I can reach enlightenment. And I must reach the state of Buddha to help every sentient being to get out of samsara. And it's not possible to understand what is Buddhahood without understanding the correct view of reality. We can wish for Buddhahood because someone told us and we listened to it so many times, so somehow we believe in it. But we do not truly understand it. Okay? So, in order to develop the wish for enlightenment, one must first understand what is enlightenment for the higher intellectual capacity disciples. Okay? That's why the first approach is first correct view of reality, first development of wisdom, then development of compassion. Then the lower capacity, this intellectual capacity disciples, first we develop compassion. There is an explanation about what is enlightenment, what is Buddhahood, what is samsara. We listen to it, and out of trust, we wish for it. But the process to develop the correct view of reality and everything is quite difficult. So, what can give us the strength to follow that path of the correct view of reality is love and compassion itself. So, on the lower intellectual capacity disciples, the path is first love and compassion, relative bodhicitta, then absolute bodhicitta, wisdom. Okay, this is the order. Okay? So, the way how this teaching was originally given, it was given for the disciples of higher intellectual capacity. So, the training of absolute bodhicitta, the training of wisdom comes first. Then comes the training of love and compassion, relative bodhicitta. But Lama Tsongkhapa made very clear, saying, yes, this was how originally the teachings were given, but the disciples of mine are all of the lower intellectual capacity, so I will invert it. So since the time of Lama Tsongkhapa, the way how the teachings have been given, also before Lama Tsongkhapa, but in different contexts, but since the time of Lama Tsongkhapa, the way how our lineage has been transmitting the guidance on the path to enlightenment is first love and compassion, then wisdom. Okay? This is the way how the guidance have been given. That's why when you look in the text, we go page 39, the actual practice, training in the awakening mind. A, how to train in the ultimate awakening mind, which is how to train in wisdom. B, how to train in the conventional awakening mind, love and compassion. Then when we go to the next page, we will see that we start from B and then we go to A. Okay? Why? The original order of the text is first A, then B. But because we are of a lower intellectual capacity, we first practice B, then we practice A. First love and compassion, then wisdom. Okay? I think it's quite clear, right? Okay. So, but the approach that I like to have, that we will go through these next days, is the approach which is, truly speaking, we are of a lower intellectual capacity, okay? But we like to understand things. So we will do both, okay? Even when we look, we have this attitude nowadays, oh, we follow science, we need to understand things. But come on, who does really understand things? We have specific people that study specific subjects and they understand their own subject, I hope. But otherwise, who understands things? We trust. Or not? No, sometimes I really have inside fun. It's not the right word, fun, but I get amazed. For example, nowadays, we have so many, almost everyone became experts on virus and vaccine and everything else, By reading few newspaper articles and by reading some online gossiping, whatever, and then there we see people using terms that we really even don't understand what they mean. And people talk with such certainty about it, no? This is a clear sign that we are of the lower intellectual capacity, but we think we are of the higher. We take something, oh, this is like this. Why? Oh, because of this and that, but our whole logic is flawed because it's based on something that someone told that we really don't understand. So to truly understand something, that's why we need people that we can trust. But to truly understand something, we need to go deep into it, starting from the very basic concepts and starting understanding. I believe many of us don't even understand clearly what is a virus. Someone like me, for example. I don't think I have a clear understanding of what is a virus. Okay? Or a molecule. I really don't have that understanding. So that's why I try not to get into conclusions of things that I don't have understanding. I think one of the very beautiful things of life is acknowledging one's own ignorance. This opens the door for wisdom. So on our path, we are of the lower intellectual capacity, but we also like to understand things. So we would go on both ways together. Okay? We'll go on the way of first going through the inner process of developing love and wisdom, but then we also go through the process of understanding what is Buddhahood, understanding that our true nature that allows us to reach Buddhahood, would go through the whole part of explanation and understanding also. Okay? Now, let's start then with it. So, page 41. We start now with the actual training, which starts by training in the conventional awakening mind. Training in the conventional mind of enlightenment. Training in the conventional or relative bodhichitta. Okay? In Tibetan, it's called Kunzup Chanchup Gisem. Kunzup, it's difficult to translate, but it's normally translated as conventional or relative. Okay? Chanchup Gisem. Chanchup is translated as enlightenment. Sem is mind. So the mind of enlightenment, the relative mind of enlightenment, And then we have Tundam Janchugisem, the absolute mind of enlightenment. Mind of enlightenment here, this word has two meanings. Is the mind of a Buddha, is the enlightened part of the enlightened mind, but at the same time is the mind that goes towards enlightenment. And in this specific case, we refer it as training in the mind that goes towards enlightenment, but it also means training in the enlightened mind. What are we training ourselves to become the enlightened mind? So, and the enlightened mind has two aspects: love, compassion, and wisdom, which is called the relative and the absolute bodhichitta. So when we say here bodhichitta, bodhi means enlightenment, chitta means mind. So it's the mind that goes towards enlightenment and is the enlightened mind also. It means it's the difference between result and path. Okay? So the first part is training ourselves in the mind of relative bodhicitta. In other words, we need to train ourselves into love and compassion. So these are the instructions of the training. Lelen tamche chiklada kunla cutting chewa gom dongle nibo pelmarjang lembe koring rangnetsam teni lungla kyombar cha yulsum tuksum getsasum jegi menga dortepa tela dremba kulwechir cholam kunto tsiki chang. It's very essential, but we will go into details. Banish the one to blame for everything. Meditate on the great kindness of all beings. Practice a combination of giving and taking. Giving and taking should be practiced alternately, and you should begin by taking from yourself. These two should be made to ride on the breath. Concerning the three objects, three poisons, and three virtues, the instruction to be followed in short is to be mindful of the practice in general by taking these words to heart in all activities. Okay? It's quite difficult to understand just by reading the root text. That's why we have commentaries. Okay? So, once we understand it, then it's very simple. And these very simple lines, they're very powerful. We need to understand one thing. Today I'm giving little explanation of other things, but in the way how Buddhism has been transmitted in Tibet, coming from India, is that in order for us to be able to remember the meaning, there are written texts, instructions, which are very essential. So in few lines, you have deep meaning. Then, first we learn that very simple lines, very not simple, very condensed lines. Then we go deep into their meaning. And once we have understood deep their meaning, by reading and reciting the essential lines again, we can connect to the whole meaning. Okay? So that's why if we can memorize these texts, if we can read it again and again, once we go through the commentary and we understand the deeper meaning, by reading the one line, like banish the one to blame for everything, it connects with us with the whole rest of the meaning. Okay? So when we study in a deeper way Buddhist philosophy and practice, we first memorize the root text, then we study the commentary. Because by reciting the root text, it reconnects us again to the meaning. So this is our root text of Lojong. Okay? So let's go through it. Okay. 투당 전다 경영바 송교동 담제 랑체질라 땡네 중 ludrup kis chanchu ki semrele semchen namla chakdrawa tukshim bebe pangwarcha nyendo namni chakrawe chanchu membe top minams semche yongsu matorwe zosan giegi chanchu tops che nyerang nam melam tu covers rang chejing lember songs dorna chunjules mangtu she ta mangtu she ta chi gotes chiba rangi tunche dans tube shingi tunze pas dini gini kebertös jikten dewa chinyepa te kun shende döle jungs sheba tars. Okay. Let's start with the first line. Banish the one to blame for everything. Whenever we feel suffering, whenever there is something that we are not comfortable, no, whenever there is a sensation of an unpleasant sensation, what do? Do we blame someone? Do we look for the cause? Do we point a finger into something or someone or not? Normally, yes, right? Normally, whenever we are not well, whenever we have physical or mental suffering, there we are pointing the finger toward this one or that one, to this or that, right? If we go deeper, we will understand that the main cause of all our suffering, it is actually the obsession with self-gratification. So when it says here, banish the one to blame for everything, it means abandon, eliminate the true cause, the main cause of all suffering, of all conflicts, which is the obsession with self-gratification, so-called selfishness. Okay? So let's understand a little bit better. We had these last days, we looked a lot at samsara. Okay? How does samsara function? We have a sensation. Okay? So basically, through contact, we enter in contact through any of our 5 senses, plus the mind, any of the 6 senses. When we enter in contact with an object, no, we have sense object, sense power, sense consciousness. Then there is discernment, and we have sensation. Whenever there is sensation, inevitably there will be what in Italian we translate as Brahma, which is like this strong desire for, which is this desire to be happy and not to suffer. So on our basis we react with attraction, with aversion, or with indifference. Okay? Then what happens through that? We project into something. In order for me not to suffer more or to gain more pleasure, where do I project my happiness or my suffering? And from that we have what is called also attachment in the 12 links of interdependence, which is when we project into something our own happiness or suffering. As we project it into something, we act. We move. Okay? So, together with this projection, it comes insatisfaction, jealousy, envy, hatred, fear, anxiety, all the different emotions that we know so well. They are all coming from this basic projection of I don't want to suffer and I want to be happy, so I have attraction and aversion. Okay? Is this clear for us? So what happens is that when we go backwards, okay, before that, out of these emotions we act. When we act, we reinforce these emotions and we create karmic forces and inertia that sooner or later we will experience its results. When the results are pleasurable, we develop attachment. When the results are unpleasant, we develop aversion. And we are constantly in this cycle. Okay? There is one point which is the way how we react to our own sensations. It's determined by another aspect, which is the fact that we are not able to see reality. We are not able to see any situation without having the filter of the I and the my. Okay? We relate to people, we relate to situations by always seeing what I need, what I want, what I don't want, what is harmful or beneficial to me, the I and the my. And if we look well, we cannot generate anger, jealousy, envy, any of these negative emotions without having as one a foundation for these emotions, this obsession with self-gratification. Behind all our defilements, such as anger, jealousy, fear, miserliness, arrogance, and so on, behind all of that, what sustains it is this obsession with one's own self-gratification, with the I and the mine. Okay. This obsession with self-gratification itself comes from the ignorance of not seeing interdependence. It's the ignorance that holds reality to exist in an independent, objective way. We will talk about this later when we get to point A. Okay? We start from point B. Okay? Well, afterwards we will look at that. But what happened is that selfishness is born from ignorance. In other words, just making it trying to make it simple, when we perceive reality, at any moment, reality appears to us as if one thing is completely independent from the other. I exist independently of anything else, everything exists independently of me. And by not seeing the interdependence that is between everything, we tend up to divide. Okay? And by making this division, we develop this selfishness, this attitude of only seeing ourselves and our needs. Some people may say to me, I am not selfish, my children are more important than me. Your children. Remember that the my is an extension of the I. Okay? So, the first step on developing true love and compassion, altruism, is understanding that selfishly speaking, because are we selfish or not? I would say, yes, right? And it's very, very important for us to remember we cannot start our journey if not from the place where we are. We must start our path from where we are. We cannot expect ourselves to start our journey from a place where we are not. It's like if I would say, oh, would you like to train yourself in the path of enlightenment according to Tibetan Buddhist tradition? And you say, yes, I would like. Okay, the first requirement is that you need to speak perfect Tibetan and having memorized all the root texts. Then okay, everybody go home. Okay? We cannot start from a place where we are not. We need to remind ourselves that the starting point must always be where we are. And this in Buddha's teachings are very clear. So the first question is, I cannot start from being altruistic. Why? Because I am selfish. Right? So, starting from where I am, in which I truly care for my happiness and I truly care for not suffering, I need to make the first step, which is understanding who is behind my suffering. Why do I suffer? Okay? Because I don't want to suffer, and I want to be happy. I understood samsara. I want to get out of samsara. Remember, this is the preliminaries. I don't want to be anymore in samsara. Okay, but who is the one behind samsara? Who is the one making all of this? Yes, there is anger, there is jealousy, there is fear, there is a negative way of speaking, of acting, and many things around that. But who is behind all of that? Is there a sort of mastermind behind? Is there a sort of, if I need to go against one whole army, is there a general behind? Is there someone making this whole thing behind or not? Because if there is, I can kill as many soldiers that I may, new soldiers will come unless I'm able to go to the root. It's like if there is a poisonous plant, I can cut again and again the branches. But unless I don't take out the whole root, the branches will grow again and again. Okay? So let's put in this way. Imagine a poisonous plant where the branches are anger, unlimited attachment and insatisfaction. There is fear, there is anxiety, there is miserliness, there is arrogance. There are many of these which are the branches. Okay? Then there are the leaves. The leaves of this plant are our actions of body, speech, and mind. How they manifest when we speak out of jealousy or envy and so on, so on. The actions. So we have the actions, which are the leaves, our main defilements, which are the branches, and basically, if we see there are 6 root defilements and 20 secondary defilements, and we can go on, and Buddha described 84,000 types of defilements, okay? Which is like we have 3 main branches, and then from them we have many small branches, okay? Which is the branch of aversion, of attachment, and the branch of ignorance. Then we have the main, trunk of the tree. The main trunk of the tree is selfishness. Okay? Selfishness is the trunk of the tree from which all the branches come. And below the trunk of the tree, we have all the roots. And the main root is ignorance. But we cannot reach ignorance before we deal with the branches and with the trunk. Okay? So, why do I suffer? Because I am in samsara. I suffer because I perceive reality through the filters of my negative emotions, and I need to experience situations through my own negative karmic forces generated in the past. I am in samsara. How can I stop samsara? I need to understand how it works. Can we eliminate all the negative karma that we have done up to now? Can we just stop all the karmic forces? Not really, even because there is an extra problem here which we didn't talk yet about. But we can touch it. Let's say we do a positive, I'm sorry if it's, I say this, but it's like that. Let's say I do a positive action. Okay? I go and I like someone, I fall in love with someone, or I have my children or my friends and I am kind to them and I do something nice to help them. I see them in suffering, I act out of compassion, and I do something positive. I generate a positive karma. At one point, this positive karmic force which I generate comes and ripens as a pleasant experience. I experience joy. I experience well-being. That's the result of a positive karma, right? How do we react to the result of positive karma normally? When we have a pleasant experience, we react with attachment. Again, mental defilement. Okay? How does attachment actually works? I like the sound, I want more of the sound. Then at one moment the sound ends. Who is to blame? Already aversion. The stronger is the attachment, the stronger will be the aversion. At one moment the object ends, dies. Then we develop aversion. At one moment there may be someone who is a threat for us to continue to have the object in which we project our attachment. Then again aversion. I don't know if this is clear. Let's say I really enjoy drinking water. I react with attachment. Oh, my water. So good. Then someone comes nearby saying, I am thirsty. You know, what is the reaction we have towards the person that say I'm thirsty? Attraction, aversion, or indifference? No, you, this is my water. Don't come near. Huh? Okay? So you see, as a result of a positive karma, I experience pleasure, which I develop attachment towards the object through which I experience the pleasure. I project in the object. Then at one moment, I would need to separate myself from the object. And then I generate, normally, aversion. Okay? So, to just generate positive karma and to eliminate the negative karma, it's not enough. Because also, even when we experience the result of positive karma, we react with defilements and we create, as a result, negative karma again. Okay? And on another way, if we look, how many actions have we done up to now? How many interactions with others physically? How many words have we spoken? How many thoughts have we had? Think about last week. One day. Then multiplied by 7. Okay? Then multiplied by 52. Then multiplied by the number of years that you have lived. Then multiply it by many, many, many other lives before. What happened is that the speed in which we experience results and the speed in which we create causes don't match. We create much more causes, we plant many more seeds than the ones that we are able to harvest. We create many more causes than the results that we are able to experience. So, we carry with us an immense amount of karmic force. And at the same time, we are not able to stop generating karma because we are always acting. Okay? So, the solution is not to stop karma. It's not possible. Okay? Once there is karma, once there is action, inevitably there will be result. So in the moment that there is karmic force, wanting or not wanting, there will be sensation. Pleasure, suffering, indifference. There will be result. Okay? So where can we do something? Samsara is made of 3 parts. We have karma, result. The result comes or as suffering or as the suffering of change, which is the pleasure normally. And then we have the 3rd part, which is defilements. Okay? This is the only place where we can do something. Because it is possible to make our anger less, It's possible to make our attachment less. It's possible to learn how to react differently in situations. It's possible to change our behavior. It's possible gradually to go into the root, which is ignorance. So in the moment that our priority is to get out of samsara, we go and we look, but where is actually the door through which I can enter? Which is the little space, like if there is like a fort and there is one small openness through which I can enter. Where is it? Is in our own defilements. That's where we can change the habits of our mind. But what happened is that we can do a lot to have less anger. Okay? We can do a lot of, like a modern term, anger management. No? We can meditate how anger is harmful to us and we should not get angry, and we can meditate and familiarize ourselves not to be jealous and not to be envy and so on. But what happens is that even though I'm able to hold not to get angry or not to act with jealousy and envy and so on, as soon as I stop making that effort, anger will manifest again, as long as selfishness is there. Imagine this tree. I can start by taking out the leaves, so I don't act anymore out of these emotions, which is a good step. Then after I need to cut the branch, I'm able to not act with anger. I eliminate anger. But in the moment that I stop making the effort, the branch will grow again. Because the trunk is still there. So, what is behind anger? Have you ever gotten angry on anyone or anything where the I and the my had nothing to do? I don't think so. Okay. Were you ever jealous or envy where the I and the my had nothing to do? No. Were you ever feeling miserliness or arrogance or anxiety where the I and the my had nothing to do? No. So, selfishness works in the following way. First of all, through selfishness, we divide the world existence into 9 categories. Okay, which is 3 multiplied by 3, which is not only people. We divide situations, objects of our senses. We divide everything that we perceive into these 9 groups, which is basically 3 groups, okay? Which is, in the moment that I listen to a beautiful sound, what reaction I have towards the sound? Attraction, aversion, or indifference? Attraction. Okay? So the sound is my friend. Because I see that the sound brings me joy. I have attraction. We call friend. When I listen to a sound that I don't like, the sound is my enemy. Aversion. I don't want that sound. This is what we call enemy. This is what we call when we have aversion. Then there is a sound which is not pleasurable nor unpleasant. We have indifference, neutral. Okay? So through selfishness, we are constantly dividing everything we perceive into these 3 categories. What is good to me, I have attraction, friend. What is harmful to me, I have aversion, enemy. What is not good or bad, I have indifference. So basically there is those that are beneficial to me are my friends. Those that are harmful to me are my enemies. Those that are not beneficial or harmful are my neutral people, not friend or enemy, okay? We are indifferent. Now, let's multiply by 3. Those that are beneficial to me are my friends. 1. Those that are beneficial to my friends, the friends of my friends, are my friends. Okay? And what happened to those that harm my enemy? They are my friends. The enemy of the enemy is my friend. Okay? And by enemy and friend, we don't mean only people, also situation, objects, okay? For example, there is a situation which I don't like, I see as harmful. What happens when someone goes against that situation? I have attraction, okay? Then, the next 3. There's those that are harmful to me are my enemy. The friends of my enemy, those that are beneficial to my enemy are my enemy. The friend of the enemy is enemy. Okay? And then we have the enemy of the friend is also my enemy. Sorry, we have my enemy, those that harm me. Those that harm my friends are also my enemy. And those that are beneficial to my enemy are my enemy. So there is my enemy, the enemy of my friend, which is also my enemy, and the friend of my enemy, which is also my enemy. Then we have the other 3, which is those that are nor beneficial or harmful to me, to my friend, and to my enemy. I am indifferent. So selfishness divides the world into these groups. So basically, everything that we perceive, everything that we relate to, we are constantly putting into groups. And we are nourishing through that constantly attraction, attachment, aversion, anger, and so on. We are constantly playing this game. Then, we have after that, there are the 3 attitudes of selfishness. The 3 attitudes of selfishness regard all the 9 categories. So it doesn't matter if it is a friend, or if it is an enemy, or if it is someone to whom I am indifferent. Towards all the 3, there are 3 ways how selfishness acts. When I am in front of someone, and again, it doesn't matter if it's friend or enemy, and this someone has more than I have, is more beautiful than me, is more rich than me, is more intelligent than me, receives more attention than me, has something which I like and has more than me, it's better than me, we develop envy. Okay? When the other one has less than me, is less beautiful than me, less powerful than me, less humble than me, less this, less that, whatever, we develop arrogance. I am better. Good. We feel superior. And then when we are in front of someone that is equal to us, is as beautiful as me, as rich as me, as powerful as me, as whatever, wherever we think as me, what is our attitude? We rejoice? No. Competition. I must make myself better. So basically, we are constantly in the game of attraction and aversion. And even to the friends, we are relating with superiority, arrogance, competition, and envy. Can we ever relax? Can we see how tiring this whole thing is? You know? Finally, when the problem is gone, but this one is not like this, but that we are always making problems. We're always making problems because we are always in competition. When everything is equal, we find a way to make competition. When someone have more, we find a way through envy to generate aversion. When someone have less, we feel superior, and then we want to show our superiority and not lose our superiority. It's tiring. I don't know if it's clear, this. Okay? So, behind our many mental defilements is our own obsession with self-gratification. And then there is another aspect also. The more we are obsessed with the I and the my, the more our happiness becomes fragile. The good news, as Geshe Chekawa said, the mind is full of defects, but it has one big quality. What you teach, it follows. Is that by following a certain process, we can see, initially conceptually, by repeating it later, we can follow it on a deeper level. Non-conceptually, we can understand that selfishly speaking, it's better to be altruistic. Now, what's the difference between selfishness and altruism? Sometimes we may see altruism as the opposite of selfishness. Okay? So selfishness is the obsession with self-gratification. Altruism is the state of mind which takes care of everyone else. Wrong. I don't see it in this way, at least. If we put selfishness on one side and altruism in the other, we will never be able to develop altruism. Why? Because we are selfish. And we are not able to reach a situation in between where we are nor selfish or altruistic. So basically, if we look deeper, what is selfishness? How does selfishness manifest? What is selfishness? Selfishness manifests as this very, very strong attraction towards happiness, my own happiness, and very strong aversion towards suffering. So I want to be happy and I don't want to suffer. Okay? So selfishness basically is the attraction towards happiness and the aversion towards suffering directed towards oneself. I and my. I think it's clear this. Okay? So on the basis of selfishness there is this obsession. I want to be happy, I don't want to suffer. The rest, I don't care. More or less, it's like this, okay? Intellectually, we may care, but truly, okay? So, this is selfishness. Altruism is basically when this is the same identical attraction for happiness and aversion for suffering. The only difference is that instead of being directed only towards oneself, altruism is the expansion of selfishness. It means, do I want to be happy? Yes. But I allow myself to see you, and I see that your happiness is as important to me as my own. In altruism, we're not giving up on the self. It's not eliminating the self to take care of the other. This is our dualistic view. We need to go beyond that. On altruism, the path is, yes, I want to be happy, yes, I don't want to suffer, but I include others. Let's say that altruism is an inclusive selfishness. I don't know if it makes any sense. Okay? Altruism is like selfishness, but the difference is that it's not only me, all the others are as important to me as myself. So I allow myself to open and expand the attraction for happiness, which is called love, and the aversion for suffering, which is called compassion. I allow myself to extend it towards others. To do that, the first step is we need to see clearly how this obsession with the I and the my is actually harming ourselves. Okay? This is the first step. And we need to go through it again and again. But we need to understand clearly. Not only understanding, but we need to feel and we need to see that by only taking care of me, finally I am more harmed. I suffer more. And if I don't want to suffer, I must expand that and take care of others. If we look in our society, let's make one simple example. A family. Not so simple, but anyhow. When we are in our family, and let's say we have 5 people, whatever number of people, okay? Are we influenced when someone is not well? Yes, no? We interact with other people, and if my cousin or my mother or my husband or my wife or my children, who knows who, is not well and is suffering, it influences us or not. Yes, that's why it's so difficult to have a happy family, because to have 5 people happy at the same time is quite difficult. No, we can love very much each other, but the state of being of one person inevitably influences the others. Okay? So, in the moment that I am part of a family and I want to be well, if I am a little bit intelligent, I take care of the other people. Not only because I care for them, but also because I care for myself. Because I cannot be well if the others around me are not well. Okay? This, from a very gross level also, if we just look, are we influenced by tension, by fighting, by sadness, by fear, by insatisfaction of those that are around us or not? Yes. So, if I want to be well, I must also take care of those that are around me. Okay, this is from a more simple level. When we go to bodhichitta, it gets more deep, it's a bit different, but just to start looking from this perspective. It's like there are countries, like in Brazil, where there is a lot of violence, which comes from the very strong social difference that is there between rich and poor. Okay, it comes from our history in many ways. So, people that have a lot of material resources, so-called rich, okay? Even though for me the definition of rich is those that are satisfied, poor are those that are unsatisfied. But anyhow, so-called rich, the ones that have a lot of material resources, do they suffer because of the violence that exists in society? So they need to go with their car with bulletproof glasses, bulletproof cars, and they need to have a lot of security around and cannot go walking around the city because of fear, and needs to go for years and years of psychologists because when they went under an attack of violence, they got traumatized, which is something that happens daily. Okay, there is suffering, right, involved. Okay. I'm truly convinced that the only way to eliminate this suffering is to take care of those that are in greater need. Unless in a society people have their basic needs covered, there will be much more violence. So for me to be well, I need to take care of those that are around me. I'm talking about on a very basic level. This has nothing to do with enlightenment. Talk about society. Many societies understood this. And that's why we have social welfare. Because when everyone has a certain level of well-being, everyone will benefit from it. So the other is important to me. We are not indifferent to others. And the more we think that we do not depend on others, that we have nothing to do with the others, as long as I do what I want, when I want, how I want, I will be fine. Sorry to put in these words, but that's big bullshit. That's a big illusion. I will be happy when I can do what I want, how I want, what I want, how much I want. This will not bring happiness. We are not independent from others. We are interdependent with everyone and with the environment and everything. We breathe the air. Like one time in Brazil I saw something which is like a very clear metaphor of how our ignorance and selfishness works and our interdependence also. There were a beautiful house with nice big fences. And everything is clean and clear inside and so on. Then just on the side, there is a very poor house which don't have the resources to deal with garbage. So they burn their own garbage. And then what happened? All the toxic smoke go inside the other house also. No? What's the point? Or another example is people that they go and they have their nice house and then they take the garbage and throw from the wall of the house to the nearby land. Because it's not in my land, it doesn't exist. It's more or less what we do when we put the garbage outside, no? Because when we put the garbage out and the garbage company comes to take away the garbage, has any one of you ever gone deeper to try to understand where your garbage goes? I don't know. Normally it's not something that we do. But if the garbage that I throw ends up polluting the environment, will it harm me finally? Yes. Because we depend on the environment. Our mental and physical health depends on a clean environment. So it's not just a matter of polluting the air and having a car with a filter that doesn't allow pollution to go inside the car. Sooner or later, that pollution will come back to me. So, from a very basic level, if we don't take care of others, we are not taking care of ourselves in a wise way. If we don't take care of the environment in which we live, we are not taking care of ourselves correctly. We are being selfish in an ignorant way. If we don't take care of society in which we live, we are not taking care of ourselves and our family correctly. Again, selfish in an ignorant way. As we are selfish, at least let's try to be selfish with a little bit more wisdom. So a wise selfish will take care of others. And eventually will become altruistic. Okay? So, let's try slowly, before shifting from the attitude of I and my to that of including others. The first step, we have no hurry to walk on the path. the first step that we need to go through is banish the one to blame for everything. Look at your own conflicts. Look at your own suffering. Look at your own difficulty. And try to see if your own selfishness has anything to do with it or not. And try to imagine how would this situation be if this obsession with self-gratification was not there. If the needs and happiness and suffering of the others were as important as your own. How would you react? Try just to imagine it. Okay? It takes some time. We cannot do this now in 2 minutes. We have some time. No? So, the first part of training ourselves into love and compassion, into altruism, into conventional bodhichitta, is recognizing and realizing how selfishness is actually harming us a lot. It's not the root of suffering, that is ignorance, which we will look later, but is the main cause. No? We go back to the metaphor of the tree, the poisonous tree. The actions are the leaves and the fruits, which generates more seeds for more to come. The mental defilements are like the branches. The main trunk is selfishness, and the roots are ignorance. Okay? But in order, before reaching the roots, we must go through the trunk first. It's very difficult to go out all at once. It's too big. So, we must understand this, that the more we are obsessed with the I and the my, the more we will suffer. The more we are able to include others, the less fragile our happiness becomes. Just start by trying to include the happiness of those that you relate yourself with as important as your own. Husband, wife, boyfriend, girlfriend, partner, whatever. Children, grandparents, friends, people that we interact daily with. Try to get those that are near to us, that we relate on a daily basis. Okay? And try to include one at a time as being important to you as your own happiness, as yourself. Okay? And there is something which is for me quite clear, but each one needs to go through one's own process, is when I include yourself in my own selfishness, let's put it this way, when your happiness is as important to me as my own, your suffering is as important to me as my own, at that moment it becomes very difficult to come in conflict with you. It's very difficult to enter in conflict. We are not truly able to generate anger towards someone to whom we have this attitude, for example. Okay? We stop being in opposition and in competition. We are together. So just allow yourself to imagine, how would it be if you would let go selfishness for a bit? No? But to see that, we need to do the inverse process, which is from suffering, conflict, fighting, insatisfaction, fear, anxiety, and so on, we go down and we see what is behind it. And we see if behind all of that there is selfishness or not. Try to see if behind every aspect behind your anxiety, behind your fear, behind your jealousy, behind your envy, behind any negative mental state, is selfishness behind it or not? And if selfishness is there, which I believe it is, but you need to make your own process, try to imagine what would happen if suddenly I was able just to stop having this obsession with myself. Would these emotions still be there? Just make the process. Then the process to eliminate selfishness, it's the whole training, okay? But there is no point starting the training to eliminate selfishness and develop altruism if we don't see selfishness as something bad, as something to be eliminated. So, because we want to get out of samsara, we must understand that samsara is coming from selfishness. Now that's my obsession. I don't want that anymore. Okay? And this will gradually, and the actual training will bring us gradually to invert our attitude and include others. And then truly we open our heart and love others. So, we start from that point. Okay, I think it's quite clear, right? So, banish the one to blame for everything. Lelen tamche chiklada. And together with that, the next verse, these 2 lines are enough for one lifetime. Banish the one to blame for everything. Familiarize yourself with the great kindness of all beings, of others. Kunla kadrin chewagom. Familiarize yourself with the kindness of all. Okay? We will go through this the next days. Okay? So, with this we conclude for today. I'd like just to add that as today is the 31st of December, right? Yes, sometimes I confuse dates. So, from one, we have this convention that today is the last day of the year. No? So according to this convention, today is the last day of the year, and there is traditions connected with conventions. So based on that, today there is this celebration of the end of the year, and but today we will do it in a little different way. Basically, because we are in the middle of a pandemic. This is one reason, one of the main reasons. And then we try to take advantage of the circumstance to make it in a more meaningful way. Okay? So basically what we will do is I advise you to take the day of today to reflect upon this year and to imagine what do you want to be in the next, not what you want to do. Many people say, oh, I hope this next year will be better than the one that we have gone through. No pandemic, no this, no that, and so on. Okay, that's simple to wish for. Try to see not what do you want to happen, but who do you want to be by the end of next year. So, as we are now in the December 2021, try to wish who you want to be in December 2022. And based on that, okay, may this next year I learn this, I train in that way, may I be able to develop these qualities, who do I want to be? How do I want to live this next year that is coming? Okay, so we take advantage of this moment of New Year to direct our choices and our life. Okay, so today we will follow the program as normal. So there will be Tsok offering, then Lama Caroline's teachings. And then normally we would always have a New Year dinner. But because this year, as we follow all the indications that are given in order to take care of the pandemic and so on, then we will not have a New Year dinner. Each one will have dinner wherever you have dinner normally. Okay? And then, which is quite okay because the way how we eat nowadays, every day is New Year and Christmas dinner almost, no? So we have our normal dinner in a way, and then after that we will meet in the Gompa at 10 o'clock, in which we will have some moments of reflection and some meditations and prayers for the passage of the New Year. And we will have the moment as we pass the year to manifest a lot of love to everyone from our hearts without needing to hug everyone, which for me is quite difficult, but we put effort into that because of the moment in which we are, okay? This is something which gives a big lesson, which is we need to recognize often where are the weaknesses, what is fragile, and there is a way of respecting the weakness more than what is our pleasure. So for example, we are in a moment of pandemic with a new variant that is very contagious. I would like to hug everyone, but I understand the weakness of the moment, and that weakness is more important than the pleasure of hugging. So basically, this is my own way of seeing it. Okay? So basically, now we conclude the teachings for this morning, and then we'll continue, and we'll see you again at the end of this year. Okay? Sashi pöki chukshi medo chan rirab lingshe nide gemba de sange shindu mikte ulwargi drogu namda shingla chöpra shoa jetsun lame kutse rapten chi nam karatin le chokchur geba dang losan tembe drume sasumgi drowe munsel taktu ne gyur chi yedam Guru Ratna Mandrala Kam Niryatayami Kewa Kuntu Yanda Lama Dan Dralme Cheki Pela Longche Ching Sadan Lamge Yente Rabzone Dorje Change Kopa Nyur Tobe Sho Nimo Dele Tsendele Nime Kuyan Dele Kshin Nyensen takto delek pe kuncho sumki ngodrubotso kuncho sumki trashisho. At dawn or dusk, at night or midday, may the three jewels grant us their blessings. May they help us to achieve all realizations and spring all the path of our lives with various signs of auspiciousness. All'alba o al tramonto, di notte o durante il giorno, possano i tre gioielli concederci le loro benedizioni, possano aiutarci ad ottenere tutte le realizzazioni e cospargere il sentiero della nostra vita con molti segni di buon auspicio. Oma huntempa lame sangye rinpoche, kyopa lame tamcho rinpoche, drempa lame gindu rinpoche, Chiamne kuncho sumla chopa. Buon appetito. Grazie a tutti.